I remember the moment the room turned into a theater. Not when Jessica laughed or when Tiffany made that cutting little snort that always sounded like she was testing a perfume. Not even when Brittany and Chardonnay drifted in, sunglasses on indoors, as if the kitchen lights might paparazzi them. It was earlier quieter when Jessica's phone, face down on the counter, lit up with 6 messages and she smiled at the screen instead of at me. I watched the light move across her cheek like a cue on a stage. Something in me took a seat in the back row and stopped cheering for the show. Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with. She didn't shout it, she delivered it. The line landed in my house like a piece of set decoration, placed, angled, ready for the audience. The audience laughed on cue. I stood with a wooden spoon dripping red sauce, a little stain blooming on the tile like a small wound, and felt the most luxurious sensation I've had in years, the urge to argue sliding off me like water off oiled wood. My last reserve of trying packed a tiny bag, put on a tiny hat, and left through a tiny door in the back of my skull. The relief was almost indecent. The thing about Jessica is that she's not malicious in the cartoon way. She grew up in a family where a story wasn't worth telling unless it had a villain and a twist, and the villain could be anyone handy. She is funny and magnetic in a room the way a mirror is magnetic. You can't not look and you end up seeing yourself through her eyes. For a while, I liked who I was in that mirror. I looked dressed up, I looked interesting. I looked like a man who said yes to glitter on a Wednesday because why not? Glitter washes. Eventually, I started to notice that the mirror didn't reflect back when I needed something. The mirror was busy. We'd been together 2 years. She'd moved in 6 months ago when a lease ended and my quiet, well-labeled life seemed like the right kind of landing. Moving in wasn't a conversation so much as a montage, her toiletries colonizing the bathroom like little chrome soldiers, her shoes multiplying in the hall like polite intruders, her art going up on my walls, beige abstract prints that looked like the printer ran out of ink and decided to embrace minimalism as a philosophy. She bought a plaque that said the Wilsons and screwed it by the door without asking. I didn't mind at the time. I took a picture from my mother and typed the caption I didn't send. Look, Mom, I caught a hurricane and taught it to fold towels. There were good days. There were nights when we cooked and she let the playlist be mine and she swayed in my sweatshirt and the house felt like a place a person could be. There were other nights when the house felt like a theater set and I was an extra who needed to stop blinking so much. Her best friends, Tiffany, Brittany, and Samantha, though Jessica always called her Char, were a chorus who came by with news bulletins about people I didn't know. Tiffany, the strategist. Brittany, the mood. Samantha, who told stories like she was trying out for a true crime podcast, soft voice, gallows humor, eyes cataloging exits. When they were around, I minded my pans and my posture and tried to be a pleasant silence. The kitchen humiliation was almost a relief. I'd argued before. I'd tried the calm ask for logistics. What lake, what route, what plan if the car breaks down, what number to call if I need to reach you. Each time I asked, she'd act like I had asked for her internet search history, followed by a TED talk on trust. I learned to ration my questions to what I could defend in court. This time, I didn't ration. I simply stopped asking. Sounds fun, I said. Which lake? The laugh that followed sounded rehearsed because it was. That sound doesn't happen on accident. It's a habit, the instant cackle a group perfects when they have decided where the power is. The laugh told me a truth more honest than anything Jessica had said. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a prop that paid the mortgage and had the decency not to squeak when moved. You're right, I said then. I said it like a man agrees with a waiter who insists there's no more soup in a restaurant that sells soup. No problem, I'll eat somewhere else. The decision curled warm in my chest. I felt taller. I turned off the sauce, wiped the red spot, and watched the door swing closed behind the 4 of them, a chorus with luggage leaving a man who suddenly understood the set he was standing on. I took stock. The house was a body with a fever. Clutter had a certain temperature. Piles radiated. Bowls and trays, all empty, sat like open mouths across surfaces. Beige pillows stood in civil war against each other on a couch that stained if you whispered curry at it. The art on the walls announced that color was for amateurs. The scent in the air was fig, but nervous. Everywhere I looked, a version of taste that apologized for the concept of wanting anything. I went next door with a lemon cake still warm enough to fog the plastic dome. Mrs. Gable answered before I finished knocking. She always does. She wears robes and colors called things like dock smoke and peony past due, and her lipstick is the red of old photographs of grandmothers who didn't play. Is this the cake with the glaze? She asked. It is. Then it's a serious visit. Sit. I told her the truth. I quoted the line. I did it in her voice. Mrs. Gable listened like a judge who has already decided but is willing to enjoy the closing argument anyway. Stop acting like you're married, she repeated once, in the tone of a woman smelling something off in a fridge. And she said it in your kitchen. With an audience, I said. Theater, she said, satisfied. People mistake it for real life. Makes them lazy. She adjusted her robe like she was stepping onto a stage. What's my line? I told her about the plan, not revenge, not even a prank, a redecoration of reality. She would only need to improvise a little when Jessica returned confused about her new lack of access to a house she had declared didn't come with obligations. I'll be kind, Mrs. Gable said, which is what people say right before they are kind in a way that lands like a rehearsal for consequences. I started with boxes. It's amazing how much a life weighs when you don't feel like carrying it anymore. I labeled because labeling is the way I say, I won't be cruel even if I could be. Dresses went into a wardrobe box I labeled sparkly gowns, fragile egos, handle with care, the joke for me alone. Heels into a carton marked podiatrist nightmare. A shoebox of receipts and punch cards from places that sell $12 smoothies got its own small box, labeled proof of concept. Her toiletries occupied two whole moving boxes, face paint and bottled promises. I wrapped perfumes in t-shirts and taped shut the box with a longer piece of tape than strictly necessary because even in a mood, I am exacting. I took pictures, I printed receipts, I made a spreadsheet with timestamps because facts are my religion and paper is my prayer. Anger makes mistakes, paper doesn't. I booked a storage unit online, Unit 42 because it felt like an answer, and hired two movers through an app who showed up in a truck that smelled like jasmine and motor oil. They were the sort of men who didn't need my story because they had the muscle memory of 100 like it. One nodded toward the art on the wall and said, "These are light," which is a sentence that sits with me still. We were done by noon Saturday. The house looked denuded, a model home after a showing, except the model had been a woman who sold discontent. The silence was loud. I rolled up the beige rug and vacuumed twice and still found glitter glinting like tiny, stubborn arguments. I listed the white couch online and sold it to a man named Rick who asked if the couch was friendly to projectile nachos and nodded solemnly at my answer. I bought a black leather recliner sofa that looked like a piece of equipment more than furniture, a thing that understood television. 16 cup holders felt obscene, which is why I wanted them. The pinball machine took more work. A Craigslist listing led me to a garage with posters stapled to the drywall and a man who said words like multiball with a reverence I reserve for clean vector curves. The machine didn't work in any meaningful way, but it lit up when you plugged it in, and the lights were honest without promising anything. I loaded it into my SUV and drove home grinning like I was bringing home a dinosaur. The rug arrived that evening, a rectangle of artificial grass with yard lines and the kind of white numbers you can see from a bad angle. I rolled it out and stood on it for a long time, feeling how a joke can also be a boundary. I changed the Wi-Fi network name to Get Your Own Wi-Fi and the password to Not Married Lol, because even on my best days, I am a man who enjoys a joke with a lock on it. Sunday morning, I did the lock for real. A new deadbolt, a precise chisel, a satisfying click at the end. I changed passwords on streaming accounts, and on the camera app, I set up two-factor authentication like a man kneading dough. Then I drove to the animal shelter with the lie people tell themselves that costs them time and gets them love, just to look. The St. Bernard was named Gus by people with a sense of humor and a rich tolerance for drool. He was a planet with a dog attached. When he leaned against the kennel door, the door reconsidered its job description. His eyes were the color of brewed tea. The volunteer, a kid with acne and sincerity, said, "He thinks he's a lap dog." "I'm not sure I have a lap that could take it," I said. "He will make one," the kid said, like he was prophesying a small, generous disaster. We did a meet and greet in a yard ring with chain link and optimism. Gus put his head under my hand like we had discussed it beforehand. He flomped onto his side and breathed like a man with a mortgage. When he tried to sit in my lap, the bench labeled itself not a weight-bearing structure in my head. I did the paperwork, microchip, shots, a discussion about his diet that involved a bag of kibble that looked industrial. I bought a drool towel because I am a person who reads the board and keeps receipts. He rode home like a dignitary. People looked at the SUV because it looked like it contained a mistake that might be legal. He took 3 steps into the living room and climbed onto the new sofa like he was claiming a small, handsome country. He put his head on my knee and sighed. He had a smell of clean hay and Dodge shampoo with notes of laundry day. I felt my shoulders come down from somewhere near my ears. Houses don't feel like homes until something in them breathes other than you. At 8:57 p.m., the doorbell notification lit my phone. I knew the exact minute because I've been watching the light crawl down the living room like evening explaining itself. Jessica filled the frame, lake tan, sunglasses in her hair, ponytail high and practical. She put the key in the lock and frowned when it didn't turn, like a vending machine had dared to question her quarters. She tried again, and again. She knocked with the palm of her hand the way people do when they believe a louder noise changes facts. Gus raised his head, rumbled, and went back to sleep with regretless integrity. My phone vibrated on the pinball machine. Call, call, call. Decline, 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 decline. A text arrived. Open the door. Another. My key isn't working. Then a third. My tea isn't working. I peered at that one like it was a poem. Same, I said, and scratched Gus behind the ear. 5 minutes of banging turned the porch into a percussion section. Then the light next door flicked on. Mrs. Gable stepped out holding a watering can at an hour that didn't suggest plants. "Jessica?" she called, as if verifying a rumor. "I can't get in," Jessica said. "Is Tom home?" "I can see the lights." "Tom's home," Mrs. Gable said, the voice you use when you're delivering a verdict that has already been decided. "He had himself a marvelous weekend. Transformative. He told me the news." Jessica's shoulders squared. "What news?" "That you two aren't married, dear. That you prefer independence." So he celebrated his independence by redecorating. "It's very manly now, rugged, and he got a wonderful dog, a companion who is loyal and doesn't talk back. Isn't that sweet?" If a face could have a plot twist, hers did. She pressed her cheek to the glass and saw the football field rug, the black leather sofa occupied by an organism that could knock over a mailbox with its head, and the pinball machine glowing like a nonsense lighthouse. She made a sound that would have killed microphones. Her thumbs flew over her phone screen. My phone lit with a novella. I answered with a sentence. You said we aren't married and I don't get a say. Agreed. This is my house. You don't get a say in how I live in it. Your belongings are at 123 Storage Way, Unit 42 Code 124. You have a month to retrieve them. Have a good night. I blocked her number. The doorbell feed showed her reading, then the throw. Her phone arced onto the lawn like it had been found guilty. She screamed once, the kind of scream that alerts angels and code enforcement, then paced and called someone else and then someone else, and finally Tiffany's sedan appeared with headlights that could cut chalk. Tiffany hugged her on the lawn like sorrow was a photogenic disease, and they left without knocking again. What happened next I could have written in advance. The posts arrived like clockwork. If you've ever watched someone soap a mirror for effect, you know the choreography. A photo of sunlight on a glass of rosé. A story with music that could make a grocery list sound like betrayal. A text over a photo of lake water. Sometimes you have to choose yourself. No names because she isn't stupid, just nouns with sharp edges. Mutual friends messaged with the drippy concern of people who want to be seen being supportive. A man who had once borrowed my truck to move a mattress wrote me a paragraph about toxicity. I wrote him back 2 words. Good luck. 2 days. That's how long I gave it before I posted. Before, after, us. Before the waiting room couch, the beige rug, the little bowls that collected exactly nothing. After, the leather recliner couch with cup holders that could host a small tournament, the pinball machine humming its light, the football field rug. Us, me and Gus, the weight of his head on my shoulder, the wide idiot grin of a man and a dog who had found new gravity. The caption was simple. Decided to redecorate based on my new relationship status. It was brought to my attention that I'm not married and don't get a say, so I'm embracing my freedom. No say, no stay, dog eyes my co-pilot. It moved. People love dog content because dogs don't make people choose sides. Mutual friends who had posted word salads under her cello soundtracks sent me laughing faces and then paragraphs that started with "to be fair." I didn't reply. A former coworker texted me a photo of a couch identical to mine in a showroom with the caption, "Are we doing this now?" My softball teammate wrote, 16 cup holders, 14 friendships saved. Another sent, "That rug is a cry for help." I typed back, "It's a boundary you can vacuum." Then the letter came, wrongfully dispossessed. Caused to be homeless, demanded immediate access. It was written in legalese but snowed like a candle called performative concern. I scanned my mortgage, printed the utility bills, attached the storage receipt, plus a sheet of thumbnail photos, timestamp boxes with labels, the lock on Unit 42, the keypad under my hand. I wrote back, "I am happy to schedule a mutually convenient time for Mrs. T to retrieve any items she believes remain in my possession from the secured storage unit I have prepaid for 1 month. In the meantime, please advise if your client would like to reimburse me for 6 months of rent, utilities, groceries, and internet access she consumed as a non-contributing resident per her express belief that no partnership existed. We can also discuss small claims options should she wish to dispute any inventory. Thank you for your prompt attention." We did not hear from that office again. We did, however, hear from the police because someone placed an anonymous call about a welfare concern, a woman locked out by a controlling boyfriend. I stepped outside with a folder in my hands and the calm of a man who would rather not perform but will if the theater insists. The older officer had a mustache you could harvest for wisdom. The younger one had the tired courtesy of a man who has done 12 of these already this month. "Evening," Mustache said. "Evening," I said. I handed over the folder. Everything is in there. Storage receipt, itemized list, photos, mortgage, a text where she declared my status in the relationship, and a very nice picture of my dog. The younger officer peered into the window. Gus pressed his face to the glass and fogged it with the force of a small weather system. "Nice dog," he said. "He believes in gravity and snacks," I said. "We're not here to pick a side," Mustache said, which is what people say when the paper in their hands has already suggested a side. He looked through the photos, nodded at the timestamps, asked if there were firearms in the house. I said no. They left with a standard warning about how neighborhoods are made of ears. I waved at the doorbell camera for whoever was watching later and went inside to sit with Gus and the small, satisfying drone of a refrigerator that owed me nothing. For a few days, I waited for a thing that didn't come, the urge to crow. There is a part of me, immature and loud, that wanted to write a long post with screenshots and snark and the satisfaction of a man who has kept receipts. That part of me didn't show up. Instead, I cleaned. I wiped down cabinets that had sticky fingerprints I didn't recognize. I aired out rooms that had learned the perfume of someone who did not pay their share. I found the bowl of decorative moss I had consented to somehow and threw it out like a moral victory. I took Gus for walks and learned how many people in my neighborhood knew his name before mine. I made eggs and burned one because I was watching him try to pick up 2 tennis balls, and then a third because ambition is his spiritual practice. Tiffany posted less often. Brittany's account went silent for a day and then came back with photos of smoothies and gratitude. Samantha posted a book and a black coffee and a caption about rest being work. My private messages developed tiny apocalypses, longtime acquaintances confessing that Jessica had borrowed money she hadn't repaid, stories about how the girls had once booked an Airbnb under one name and left the mess under another. I didn't compile any of it. None of it was a receipt I needed. On Thursday, the doorbell chimed in the afternoon. I watched the feed, Jessica on my porch with a man in a suit who had the smile of a person who sells timeshares or doom. I didn't open. The man held up a document toward the camera as if we were in a cartoon about subpoenas. It was a printout of a printout, blurry at the edges, performative at the center. I texted a number from the letterhead. The receptionist put me on hold for a long time. When she returned, her voice had changed from television-friendly to weekday tired. "Our office has no active case," she said. "We have sent a letter disclaiming representation." "Thank you," I said. I considered texting that information to the man on my porch, decided he was not my audience, and returned to my desk where a client waited for a logo with a curve that suggested coffee without drawing coffee. The doorbell feed showed them talking. The man gestured at the camera and at the lock. Jessica gestured at her face. Eventually, they left with a runway turn and a tight jaw. Friday afternoon, I took Gus to the dog park. I do not know when men started having their most important conversations while pretending to care about whether a ball is returned, but I contributed. A guy in a cab asked whether Gus was part horse. A woman with a dachshund asked whether I had my hands insured. Then Samantha walked up like a person stepping into her own shadow, careful, deliberate, ready to apologize and run if needed. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I said. She swallowed. "I shouldn't have laughed that day," she said. "We were performing," I offered. "Yeah." She rubbed her wrist, the tell I'd seen when the stories got good and her conscience itched. She needed an audience and I still don't know why I give her one. "You're friends," I said. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes I think we're a support group for a problem we all enable." She watched Gus bring me a ball, then decide the ball had gone through enough and sit on it. "She keeps telling me you ruined her life," Samantha went on. "I keep telling her you just stopped funding it." "I appreciate the clarity," I said. "She'll be okay," Samantha said, not as a guarantee, but as a hope. "She got a job." I raised my eyebrows. "Retail," she said. "She's mad about hours and customers and the concept of discount codes being real, but she's showing up. It's messy. She calls me after and I can hear her breathing like she just learned what it means to be tired in a way that isn't dramatic." "Work is the slowest teacher," I said. "It writes on the board every day and you copied a sentence wrong until one day you don't." Samantha smiled with her mouth, not her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said again. "You don't have to accept. I just didn't want to be the person who didn't say it." "Thank you," I said. "I accept." We stood there with the air between us doing its small, noble job. She waved at Gus, who considered allowing a stranger to have his attention and then decided to keep it. She left. I threw the ball. Gus chased it like it had said something about his mother. Life doesn't turn a corner, it widens a lane. That week, I noticed the way the light came into the living room at 9 a.m. and made the AstroTurf rug look almost plausible. I noticed the smell of the house had changed to a mix of laundry and coffee and dog that read as mine. I noticed that my phone didn't vibrate itself into a panic by noon. I went to the grocery store and did not buy berries. I would forget to eat because someone liked the look of berries in bowls. I got milk and eggs and a loaf of bread, the thickness of a decision. On Monday, my mother called. She does not call to chat, she calls with a tone that implies taxes or casseroles. "I saw photos," she said. "The dog is not a replacement for grandchildren," I said. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, which is my mother's way of saying I am being less ridiculous than usual. "He's a dog. He's lovely. He makes you smile in a way I can hear." "He drools," I said. "Most good things do," she said. She paused. "Your father would have liked him." "Gus has no respect for lawns," I said. "Neither did your father," she said. "He just called it aerating." She didn't say Jessica's name. My mother doesn't keep X's in her mouth where they can stick to teeth. She said, "Do you need anything?" And I said no, and meant it. We said goodbye like two people who believe in doors closing kindly. A letter arrived that week from the storage facility. Unit 42 had been cleared. The manager had initialed that the unit was swept and left in good condition. I stared at the photo, a box of a room with a light strip in the ceiling like a hospital, and felt a small, clean detonation of relief. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was the opposite of a task. It was the moment a list shrinks and your lungs notice. I could stop there. That's a story with an arc and a dog. But life kept going, which is why I kept noticing the small places where I had people wrong. I found a drawer with takeout menus from restaurants I don't like, but had learned to like out of convenience. I found a sweater I never wore because it made me look like a person who told waiters to pick their favorite. I donated both. I found a framed photo of Jessica and me at a wedding where we looked like we could be anything. I put it in a box and labeled the box, "Not trash, not anymore," and took it to the Goodwill drop-off because someone else can use a frame. I kept the cardboard backing with the crease down the middle. I don't know why. Maybe I like things that look like they folded and unfolded and survived. On a strange Wednesday, the doorbell rang at noon. I checked the camera and saw a woman I didn't know holding a clipboard and the expression of someone who does not enjoy conflict but has a badge for it. Behind her, offset, stood Jessica in yoga pants and a sweatshirt tied around her waist like she was dressed for a negotiation that might become a run. "Good afternoon," the woman said to the camera, then to me when I opened the door a cautious 6 inches. "I'm a mediator with community dispute resolution." She held up the clipboard. Mrs. A asked for a facilitated conversation. About what? I asked, though the question was polite to the point of parody. The return of items from the residence, she said, peering at her notes, and secondary concerns about online representations. I provided access to a storage unit, I said. It's been emptied. As for online, I posted pictures of my living room and my dog. Jessica stepped forward. You humiliated me, she said. You made me look like a freeloader. I didn't make you look like anything, I said. I redecorated my house and took a picture with my dog. The mediator did her training reflective listening, restating the concerns, setting ground rules about respectful language. She was good at it. Jessica was not. She kept drifting back to monologues about narratives and how stories work and how audiences decide what they believe. The mediator asked me what outcome I wanted. I said to return to my workday. We scheduled a follow-up at a neutral office. Jessica didn't show. The mediator called to apologize, and I told her she had nothing to apologize for. It happens, she said, which I suspect is the motto of her entire profession. I didn't hear from Jessica again for 2 weeks, and then she texted from a new number a photo of a small dog, captioned with his name, which was ridiculous, Baron or Bentley or Bieber, and the sentence, he snores like a truck. I typed back, good for him, deleted it, typed nothing, and put my phone face down. Gus climbed partially into my lap and exhaled into my shirt the way he does when he's telling me that whatever I'm trying to do can wait. Work came back into focus, which is how I know I'm okay. Fonts are monogamous. If I can tell the difference between two weights of a sans serif at a glance, my heart rate is fine. A client asked for a rebrand that didn't say rebrand. The company was called Sunbreak, which is the sort of name people give things when they want to be weather. I made them a mark with two diagonal lines that suggested light finding a seam. They asked if the lines could be a little happier. I made them bluer. They cried in the meeting because everyone is crying all the time now. Only some of us do it in bathrooms. I sent the invoice. I fed the dog. One night, I found myself grocery shopping at 10 p.m. because sometimes you want cereal when the store is quiet. In the cereal aisle, between boxes that promise heart health and childhood, I saw Brittany. She was with a man who looked like he did shoulder presses for self-esteem. She waved like we were colleagues from an old project. Hey, she said. Hey, I said. She looked at my basket, cereal, milk, dog treats. She looked at hers, oat milk, berries, a bottle of something green. You look good, she said. Her voice surprised me by being gentle. You too, I said. Her voice surprised me by being gentle. We were cruel, she said, that day, in your kitchen. You were a chorus, I said. That's different from a solo, she said. It makes people braver and worse. She picked up a box and then put it down like she'd almost stolen something. Tiff is mad at me, she said, which I did not require but received like weather. I'm trying not to be the kind of person who only has friends when there's someone else to be against. That's a full-time job, I said. She nodded and gave a half smile that could have been a start. Tell your dog I said hi, she said, and left with her green bottle and her shoulders a notch lower than they had been when she arrived. Spring became summer, which is what time does when you aren't scheduling your life around other people's performing. The rose bushes in Mrs. Gable's yard exploded into an argument about pink. She brought me a jar of cuttings and water and told me to put aspirin in it. Like a small hangover cure, she said, for plants. We sat on her porch and she told me about the year her husband died and how the world kept insisting on continuing. I hated that, she said. The garbage truck came and the mail came and the sun did its stupid old job, and I kept thinking, don't you know? Then I realized it was a kindness. I didn't have to decide what happened next. The day did it for me. I told her about how Gus approaches all decisions by choosing all options at once until the physics of his face prevent it. She cackled. Men, she said, and patted my hand, which I let stand as a blessing. At some point, almost without my consent, the house crossed a line between reaction and intention. I bought shelves that were not floating and collected cookbooks with actual stains on them. I fixed the cabinet door that had been crooked since before Jessica moved in, because fixing things is how you love a place. I hung a framed print I designed when I was 27 and too in love with geometry. It looked earnest and immature, and I left it there so I could remember the version of myself that thought perfect lines made a perfect life. Gus brought me a shoe while I was hammering, and I congratulated him like he'd fetched a diploma. Every story wants an ending. People ask me whether I've dated since, and I tell them the truth. Not yet. It's not a vow. It's not a trauma response. It's just that the part of me that used to audition for other people's lives has been on a sabbatical, and the part that reads the fine print is writing it. I don't want to explain to someone why I want to know what lake they're going to. I want to be with someone who volunteers the lake and the route and what time to start worrying if there's no text. That's not romance. That's logistics. Logistics are love with a calendar invite. Jessica's story, I assume, continues somewhere else. Sometimes a mutual friend will mention her like weather in another city, windy, overcast, a chance of drama. After a while, the mentions got less frequent. Once, at a farmer's market, I saw a woman whose hair and hips were Jessica from a distance, and I felt the old reflex, the one that braced. The woman turned, and she wasn't, and my body let out a breath I had not ordered. I bought tomatoes, I made sauce, I ate alone at the counter and felt full. There is a universe where I posted every screenshot and slung every adjective and lit up group chats like flares. In that universe, people took sides and applauded cleverness and learned nothing. In this one, I changed a lock and a rug and my mind. It is quieter here. The pinball machine still doesn't work, but when my friend's kid visited, he stood in front of it with both hands on the glass and whispered, "Whoa," and I felt a rare kind of pride. I had bought a thing that did not need to function to be worth having. That felt like a lesson, even if I couldn't tell you the subject it belonged to. On a Tuesday night, months later, my doorbell camera pinged at 10. Mrs. Gable's porch light flicked on a second after mine. I opened to find a small box on the mat, no return address, handwriting I recognized for the way the letters leaned forward like they were late. Inside, a key on a keychain that said Lake Life and fake rope script. No note. I took the key to my desk drawer where I keep old rolls of washi tape and a lighter I never use. I labeled a small envelope with a long label, "Key returned by mail." I put the key inside. I lit the lighter and didn't use it. I closed the drawer. The house held still around me. Gus growled at the dark, then farted like a brass section, and the moment passed. I keep thinking of the line she delivered in my kitchen and the line I delivered back. Hers was a rule, mine was an agreement. That's the difference that saved me. You can argue with rules, agreements in the conversation. I agreed with her. I stepped out of the story that required me to have no say and built a place where my say was small and sufficient. What to cook, what to watch, when to walk the dog, when to answer the door. The rest of it, how she writes herself in rooms I am not in, how the chorus sounds without me placed somewhere else like a show I chose not to renew. Sometimes, right before I fall asleep, I hear the echo of the laughter from that night, thin and hard and bright. It doesn't sting anymore. It sounds like flatware in a drawer I don't open. I turn over. Gus snores in the language of contentment. The refrigerator hums. The house breathes. I breathe. That's the ending I get, which is better than applause. It is also the beginning I want. If you're looking for a thesis, here's the closest I have. Believe people when they tell you what role they want you to play. If they cast you as an audience, sit in the back row and check your watch. If they forbid you a say, give them the silence they ordered and use your voice where it matters. On leases and locks and lists, on what you buy and what you bring home, on which door you open and for whom. And if you are very lucky, one day a dog will choose your lap like it's the only geography he recognizes, and you will understand that love is not a joke or a stage, but a weight and a warmth. You will let it settle. You will stop apologizing for the number of cup holders you own. You will sleep. And the sign by your door will say nothing at all, because the only people who need to read it already know your name. So what do you think? Was I too harsh, or did I simply give her exactly what she asked for? If someone told you you don't get a say, would you pack their things and change the locks, or try to talk it out? Drop your opinion in the comments, smash the like button if you enjoyed the story, and make sure to subscribe. The next one has even crazier twists you won't want to miss.